Some stars shine so bright they feel like they belong to all of us. They're the faces that define a generation, the smiles that feel like a dear friend's, the personalities that just seem to capture an era. For millions who grew up in the 1950s and 60s, that star was Annette Funicello. She was the ultimate girl next door, the most beloved Disney Mouseketeer, and the undisputed queen of the sun-drenched beach party movies that America dreamed of. Her image was one of pure, wholesome joy. Her life seemed like a fairy tale written by Walt Disney himself. But fairy tales often have hidden, darker chapters. Behind that radiant smile, Annette Funicello's life was shadowed by a private struggle, a relentless illness she fought with incredible courage and grace. It was a battle that would ultimately lead to a devastating tragedy, one that saw the very home where she had built her life and raised her family for over 40 years go up in flames, left as a charred and empty shell. The story of her final years is one of heartbreaking loss, but it's also a story of incredible love, unwavering devotion, and a quiet strength that defined her far more than the spotlight ever could. She was America's sweetheart, a smiling face that lit up a generation. But behind the dazzling image of Mouseketeer Annette Funicello was a life marked by a secret illness and a quiet, heartbreaking tragedy that would see her vibrant home of 40 years reduced to a ruin. So what really happened in the final, sad chapter of this beloved star's life, and what became of the fortune she left behind? We investigate the devastating fire, her brave but tragic battle with MS, and the untold story of a star who suffered in private while the world watched her shine. To truly understand the tragedy that would later befall Annette Funicello, you first have to understand just how famous she was, and the special place she held in millions of hearts. Her story doesn't begin with a calculated audition, but with a moment of pure talent spotted by the master storyteller himself, Walt Disney. Born in Utica, New York on October 22, 1942, Annette moved with her family to Southern California when she was 4. She was a shy child, so her parents enrolled her in dance and music lessons to help her open up. It was at a dance recital in 1955 when fate stepped in. A 12-year-old Annette was performing in Swan Lake at the Starlight Bowl in Burbank. In the audience that day was Walt Disney, who was personally scouting talent for his new TV show, The Mickey Mouse Club. He was captivated by the young girl's grace. Annette was the last of the original 24 Mouseketeers to be cast, and one of the very few personally picked by Walt Disney. When the Mickey Mouse Club premiered in October 1955, it was an instant phenomenon, and Annette quickly became its breakout star. There was a sweetness to her that audiences just adored. While other child stars might have seemed manufactured, Annette felt real. She was the girl everyone wanted to be friends with. The public response was insane. By the end of the show's first season, she was getting up to 8,000 fan letters a month, way more than any other cast member. Recognizing her popularity, Disney created a special series within the show just for her, simply titled Annette. She wasn't just a Mouseketeer anymore, she was simply Annette. Her relationship with Walt Disney was like that of a father and daughter. She revered him, always calling him Mr. Disney, and never felt comfortable taking him up on his offer to call him Uncle Walt. He, in turn, felt deeply responsible for her image. When she wanted to change her last name to something more American, like Turner, he gently insisted that Funicello was a beautiful name she should be proud of. He guided her career with a protective hand, and when the Mickey Mouse Club ended its original run, Annette was the only Mouseketeer kept under contract. This led to a seamless transition from TV star to movie star and recording artist. She starred in Disney films like The Shaggy Dog and Babes in Toyland. Her singing career took off with hits like Tall Paul and the classic Pineapple Princess. Her records were hugely successful, spawning 15 albums with a unique double-tracked vocal effect that became known as the Annette sound. But it was in 1963 that Annette helped launch an entirely new film genre, cementing her status as a teen icon. At 21, she starred opposite heartthrob Frankie Avalon in Beach Party. The movie was a low-budget, fun-filled romp about surfing, dancing, and teenage romance, and it was an explosive hit. Teenagers flocked to drive-ins to see it, and it spawned a whole series of sequels, including Muscle Beach Party and the iconic Beach Blanket Bingo. Throughout it all, Annette carefully maintained the wholesome image Disney had cultivated. In a famous story, Mr. Disney himself requested she not wear a revealing two-piece bikini in the films. While her navel did make a few brief appearances, her swimsuits were generally more modest than her co-stars, a decision she never regretted. It only enhanced her appeal as the good girl. This mix of sun-kissed glamour and girl-next-door values made her a cultural touchstone. The films themselves had a huge impact, popularizing surf culture, fashion, and music, and even featured legends like Stevie Wonder and Little Richard. Her personal life was also blooming. After a famous teenage romance with singer Paul Anka, who wrote his hit Puppy Love about her, Annette found lasting love with her agent, Jack Gallardi. They married in 1965 and had 3 children, Gina, Jack Jr., and Jason. That same year, they bought a sprawling ranch-style house in the upscale Encino neighborhood of Los Angeles. This house on Sandy Lane would become her sanctuary, the place where she would step back from fame to build a family. It was here she would raise her children and create 4 decades of memories. The golden era was in full swing, but a storm was gathering on the horizon that would change everything. The move from the vibrant sets of beach movies to a quieter life as a wife and mother was one Annette embraced. She'd been in the public eye since she was 12, and now she was focused on her family. While she never fully quit show business, her priorities had shifted. In 1981, her marriage to Jack Gallardi ended, but in 1986, she found love again with Glenn Holt, a kind horse breeder she'd known for years. The first sign that something was wrong came in 1987. Annette and Frankie Avalon reunited for the film Back to the Beach, a nostalgic parody of their 60s hits. It was during filming that she began to experience unsettling symptoms. While walking on the sand, she felt unsteady on her feet. It was subtle at first, but it was frightening. Her husband, Glenn, recalled her saying she just couldn't walk very well on the beach. The episodes of dizziness prompted them to see a doctor. After a series of tests, Annette received the diagnosis that would change her life forever. She had multiple sclerosis. MS is a cruel, unpredictable disease that turns the body against itself. The immune system attacks the protective coating on nerves, disrupting the signals between the brain and the body. Symptoms can range from numbness and fatigue to a complete loss of balance, coordination, and eventually the ability to walk or speak. Annette was only 45. She and Glenn made the difficult decision to keep her illness a secret. She didn't want pity, and she didn't want the disease to define her. For 5 years, she battled MS in private, a silent struggle waged behind the doors of her Encino home. Glenn even secretly told Frankie Avalon about her condition before they went on a national concert tour, asking him to watch over her on stage, to be there if she stumbled. By 1992, however, hiding the truth was no longer an option. Her balance issues had gotten worse, and the Hollywood rumor mill started churning. Tabloid stories cruelly speculated that she was an alcoholic. For a woman who built her career on a clean living image, being accused of a vice she never had while fighting. A debilitating disease was devastating. Annette knew she had to take back her own story. In an act of incredible bravery, she went public, announcing to the world that she was battling multiple sclerosis. The revelation shocked her fans, who still pictured her as the eternally youthful girl from the beach. The response was an overwhelming flood of love and support. Her home was filled with flowers and cards from well-wishers. By going public, Annette turned her personal struggle into a public mission. In 1993, she established the Annette Funicello Research Fund for Neurological Diseases to fund research into a cure. She became a powerful advocate, saying, "I know now that my mission is to help others raise funds for MS." The years that followed were a slow, heartbreaking decline. She chronicled her struggles with grace in her 1994 autobiography, "A Dream is a Wish Your Heart Makes." But the disease was relentless. By 2004, the girl who had danced her way into America's heart could no longer walk. By 2009, the singer whose voice had charmed a generation could no longer speak. She required round-the-clock care. Through it all, her husband Glenn was her rock. He became her full-time caregiver, a testament to a profound and unwavering love. He had promised to thought was getting Annette to safety. The situation was desperate. Annette, confined to a wheelchair and unable to move on her own, was completely helpless. Glenn rushed back to the bedroom and got Annette into her wheelchair. He tried to get to the front door, but the main hallway was already an inferno, cutting off their escape. Panic wasn't an option. As he later said, "I didn't want to frighten her, and I knew if I collapsed, she would be helpless." He raced them back to the bedroom, which had a sliding glass door. In a moment, he described as a surge of super strength. Glenn got his wife, in her wheelchair, out onto the patio and then lifted her over a fence into a neighbor's yard. He, Annette, and the nurse all managed to escape the blaze, but they didn't get out unharmed. By the time firefighters arrived, the home was engulfed in flames. 45 firefighters battled the blaze and got it under control in under half an hour. Annette, Glenn, and the nurse were all rushed to a hospital and treated for smoke inhalation. Thankfully, they were all expected to recover. But the emotional and material losses were catastrophic. The home that had been Annette's sanctuary for more than 40 years was completely destroyed. The fire had gutted the house down to the studs, the roof had collapsed, and the interior was a blackened, unrecognizable ruin. Lost in the flames was a lifetime of irreplaceable memories and treasures. Memorabilia from her iconic Disney career, items that chronicled her entire journey, were gone. Perhaps the most heartbreaking loss of all was said to be 2 personal, handwritten letters from Walt Disney himself, a tangible connection to the man she saw as a second father. All of it was reduced to ash. The Encino house was no longer a home. It was a wreck. It was deemed uninhabitable, a shell of what it once was. The family had lost everything. For Annette, whose world had already been so severely limited by her illness, the loss of her home was a devastating blow. The property was put up for sale, not as a home, but as a teardown. It went to auction and sold in the fall of 2011 for $714,250. While that's a lot of money, it was a fraction of what it would have been worth otherwise. The sale marked the definitive, heartbreaking end of an era. The house on Sandy Lane, a place so deeply tied to Annette Funicello's life story, from her golden days of fame to her private years of struggle, was gone forever. It became another Hollywood property with a particularly tragic story. After the fire destroyed their home, Annette and Glenn moved to a more modest property near Bakersfield, California. This move marked the final chapter of her life, one lived far from the glare of Hollywood. Here, in the quiet of the countryside, she was surrounded by nature and the unwavering care of her husband and family. Her health, however, continued to decline. The progressive form of MS she had was relentless. Having already lost her ability to walk and speak, she eventually needed a feeding tube for nourishment. Her daughter, Gina, would later reflect that even as her mother lay in a coma induced by the MS, they would just hold her sweet hands. On April 8, 2013, Annette Funicello passed away peacefully at a hospital in Bakersfield. She was 70 years old. The official cause of death was complications from multiple sclerosis. Her family was By her side, her daughter beautifully captured the feeling of her passing, saying, "She's on her toes dancing in heaven. No more MS." Tributes poured in from friends, fans, and celebrities, all mourning the loss of America's sweetheart. Frankie Avalon, her lifelong friend, expressed his profound grief, and the Walt Disney Company mourned the loss of a true Disney legend. After her death, questions naturally arose about her fortune. While exact figures are private, at the time of her passing, estimates from various public sources placed Annette Funicello's net worth between $10 and $15 million. This wealth was the result of a lifetime in entertainment, starting with her modest Disney contract and growing through her films, hit records, and TV appearances. Later in life, she proved to be a smart businesswoman, launching her own line of collectible teddy bears and a successful fragrance. But Annette's true legacy was never about money. It was about the joy she brought to millions and the courage she showed in the face of unimaginable hardship. A huge part of her legacy is the Annette Funicello Research Fund for Neurological Diseases. It continues its vital work today, a lasting tribute to her mission to turn her personal pain into hope for others. Her cultural legacy is immeasurable. She was the original Disney girl, paving the way for generations of stars. The Beach Party films are now considered timeless pop culture classics. She was inducted as a Disney legend in 1992 and has a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. At Disneyland Paris, a 1950s-themed restaurant called Annette's Diner stands as a permanent tribute to her charm. More than the awards, though, her legacy lives in the memories of those who grew up with her. She was a symbol of a more innocent time. In her later years, she became a different kind of symbol, one of grace, dignity, and quiet heroism. She faced a devastating illness not with bitterness, but with a resolve to help others. The destroyed house in Encino remains a powerful symbol of all that was lost. But the foundation of her legacy was built on something far stronger, on talent, kindness, resilience, and an unbreakable spirit.